Recording in progress.
Welcome everybody to a short additional meeting scheduled for the Zoning and Planning Committee in order to hear the particulars about an amendment to sections 5.1.4, 6.4.29, and 7.8.2, which is item 3223, in order to make outdoor dining permanent. So we're going to hear a presentation, and then our only job tonight, certainly we can ask questions and have a discussion, but our only job tonight is to set the public hearing, which is a bit of a formality because it has already been noticed for February 13th, as we discussed at our last meeting, so that we could move this forward expeditiously. So I believe that, actually, I should say I'm Deb Crossley, chair of the committee, Councilor at Large from Ward 5, and I'm joined at the table by President Albright, Councilor at Large from Ward 2, Allison Leary, Councilor at Large from Ward 1, Holly Ryan, Ward Councilor from Ward 8, and Josh Krinsman, at large Councilor from Ward 4. And I'm joined by Director Barney Heath at the table, and our clerk Jacqueline Norton is with us. Excuse me?
Councilor Wright is on.
Yes, I will get there. And then on the video screen, we have Councilor Wright, also a member of the committee. And we're joined additionally by Jen Kyra, who is Deputy Director of Planning, and John Sisson, who is our Economic Development Director. We're also joined by members of the Planning Board. Is Kelly Brown here to introduce the committee? I see him, yes. Could you introduce your committee, please? He disappeared. He disappeared. I see Peter Doringer, Jen Malinsky, Kevin McCormick, and of course, Kelly. Barney Heath and Kelly Brown has returned. Chairman Brown, I had just introduced your committee. You seem to have some technical issues.
Yes, I did. Thank you.
All right. So without further ado, I understand that John Sisson is presenting the proposed amendments.
He appears to have some difficulty signing on at this point, so I'm happy to kick things off.
Okay,
Then,
are there no slides this evening?
I think the intention was to go with the red line that was submitted to facilitate the discussion tonight. It's a pretty straightforward ask in terms of the amendment that we're looking for.
It is. Would you like to simply describe it, and then if he gets back online, he can share his screen? Is that how, can it work that way?
Yes, I'm happy to kick things off, and I'm sure that Jennifer will assist and correct me along the way. This follows a presentation to PS&T that dealt with the authorization for the chair, for the Commissioner of Public Works, the Planning Director, and the Police Chief to designate outdoor dining spaces, which is consistent with the practice for the last number of years that we've had and has gone very well in that respect. However, to make the permanent changes to the on-street dining, since our current zoning ordinance didn't anticipate that the extra seats would require additional parking associated with them. Interestingly enough, the sidewalk dining ordinance specifically exempted the seats that were created on the sidewalk from having a parking space requirement. So the modification that we are seeking would be to provide that same exception and exemption for the on-street dining seats that would be created. Couple things on that. John could probably speak to that better than I could in terms of,
He's back.
okay, the number of seats that are being created. So I'm happy to cede that to John to take over in terms of what's happening.
Okay, yeah, apologies for the technical issues here. I wasn't able to hear you. I think my mic was working anyway. So, yeah, I think Barney, that's correct. I think one of the things just to point out, in addition, is that we did I think inspectional services and other departments during last year in 2022 for outdoor dining interpreted the ordinance to be inclusive of, whether it was sidewalk or protected parking space. So I think what we're attempting here is to just sort of clarify that we're treating both the on-street parking and the sidewalk, on-street dining and on sidewalk dining the same under the ordinance. So Andrew Lee had pointed out that there were 3 areas, as I pointed out in the memo, where outdoor dining or cafe furniture in the public way was referenced in zoning, and that we just needed to make sure that everything aligned so that we were doing this correctly. So those are listed, I think, at the bottom of page 1 and the top of page 2. And then, of course, there's Andrew's red line on pages 3, 4, and 5, which spell out, I think, the changes that would need to be done in the zoning ordinance. And I'll hush now and be happy to take questions.
Yep, Mr. Assistant, I wonder for the folks who are watching who may not have had the memo, could you list the key pieces?
Yes, so because of the emergency order authorization from the Baker administration, which expires April 1st of this year, the city needed to codify its authority over, creating outdoor dining in the public way, specifically in parking spaces. And then just, and I think we'd had a lot of feedback from council about, let's implement this in a way to make it permanent. And that's what we, are attempting to do. But I would say at the last paragraph in my memo, which spells out, everyone is still wrestling with a lot of the details. And by everyone, I mean a lot of other Eastern Massachusetts municipalities. This is a fairly new phenomenon, although it's very popular. And I believe we still haven't arrived at best practices in the way of managing outdoor dining as a new government function. So I think, over the next year or two, we'll probably have some more information, and I'd like to bring back maybe some analysis to the council this summer and talk about what we do know and be able to plan for the future.
Okay, thanks very much. Is that, yes, I was just asking that. Councilor Baker.
Hi, thank you. I'll just be quick. My memory is that the provision we made for the sidewalk furniture involves temporary, in a sense, that the furniture can be removed. Is there any distinction between how this works? Because one of the questions that I've heard raised by some of the merchants who are not in the business of dining is the loss of the parking space itself, as well as the fact that this is public property and is in effect being disposed of in some way, perhaps on a long-term basis, even though it might be a license. So to understand just how all that works with this is just a narrow change to the zoning to make the two items consistent, the sidewalks and the street parking. But I think the collateral questions are how does that policy work in terms of the city's finances, as well as its reuse ordinance. There are a whole bunch of things that go into this question. Even though I think a number of us find it an attractive feature of the city, just to understand potential effects that are created by this change. And as well as others that would have to go along with it.
Thank you, Counselor. I will, Barney, I'll take that at first and then I'll defer to you and Jen. I think, yes, this is a public resource that needs to be managed, and it needs to be managed in an equitable manner. And that we can do that with several levers. And I mentioned other municipalities in Massachusetts and how they are trying to manage it. I think pricing is one way to try and make it more equitable. There may also be consideration on the duration of the season in relation to, you know, holiday shopping and the weather at the latter part of the year. Those are areas, two areas that, you know, we are examining in terms of what other municipalities are doing. I don't think anyone's quite figured out the pricing piece yet. It is a valuable commodity, both for the merchants and for the city. So I think it's that is a policy that we need to continue working on. I do want it to be equitable. I have talked to merchants about it. We are looking at figuring out, and it is, I believe, in the city ordinance about, or in the parking plan about, you know, maybe having some 15-minute spaces to sort of allow for takeout or for retailers who have pickup and drop off, like a dry cleaner or a pharmacy, to be able to have access to parking for their customers, so they're not in effect losing business. So I think it's still a moving target. I apologize if this is not a sufficient answer, but I'll defer to my boss and Jen if there are additional considerations that you guys have thought of on this.
No, I think you hit it well, John, in terms of the two parameters of the dining season, where on-street dining would be allowed, covering that, and two, the fee for the spaces. And I think the third thing, John, would be the number of parking spaces maximum that a business would be allowed to occupy. So,
And I just have to follow up. Again, these are issues you could address at the public hearing when you make the presentation. That's what I thought it'd be useful to raise them now. It's just, I can see the original logic was to be able to get people outdoors when people didn't want to be eating inside together, and when the pandemic was at its height. And of course, it's desirable to eat outdoors when the weather's nice. The question I wanted to follow up on, though, is that when indoor dining is now back in season, people are eating inside, but there's also a significant takeout activity. And all of that tends to mean more impacts than might have been the case in the first situation. So I think it's important that as we think through this policy, even though this is a narrow amendment, we really have, when you make your presentation, a sense that this is part of a systemic response, so we understand the implications of all of what we're doing, if you can.
Okay, thank you. Councilor Kurtzman, you're next.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I am supportive of this, and when the time is right, I'm happy to move to set the public hearing for Monday, February 13th, if that is the desired action motion that you need.
That is what we have to do tonight.
I will mention that I have made no secret about the fact that I do not think parking minimums belong in our zoning code. I don't think that they serve the purpose for which they were intended, and I don't think they help businesses open in our city. Rather than amending 514 to exempt the parking spaces from the minimum, I would rather just eliminate restaurants, food and beverage establishments from having any minimum parking requirements in our zoning code. But I will throw that out to the group to see if anyone wants to take that up or how they want to deal with that.
So let me just first of all ask the staff. We've already noticed the hearing, and I don't have the notice with me. Is it broad enough to cover that concept? If, you know, obviously we can hold a public hearing and people can say whatever they want, and then we're gonna wrap it up after that night or some other night. Although we do want to move expeditiously because we want to get these restaurants enabled before the deadline. But the first question really is this something we can even handle under this docket item, under the notice?
So two quick thoughts. One is this is entirely consistent with the conversation and discussion we've been having with the village centers and the ground floor uses. So I think it aligns perfectly with that conversation, and we're gonna come back before version 2 and discuss parking in detail, so we can try to nail down the details of that before we get to version 2 in the village center. And 2, there's a little bit of a sense of urgency with this particular item to move it as currently proposed. And not add additional details to it that might further delay this. There's restaurants there, as John alluded to, the current state exemptions expire, I believe it's April 1st of this year. And I know restaurants are anxious and eager to have this passed so that they have some certainty as they approach the season.
I
So
appreciate all of that. It's not quite answering my question.
I think it would take further analysis, I guess, and much longer to do.
No, will notice? It is.
We don't have anyone from law here tonight, I think, that can answer that definitively.
Oh, okay.
The notice does say requesting amendments to those 3 sections to make on-street dining permanent. It doesn't say anything about eliminating parking.
Thank you.
So I don't know, but we would need someone from the law department to.
That
answer
sounds
for
like
sure.
it's broad enough that I just wanted to kind of get that out there. Thank you.
But I think that. I just can't speak until I've moved.
I know, but I have,
See,
yeah, why don't you come, closer? Why don't you sit right here? So I can keep my eye on you. Now, Councilor Princeton was speaking, and so is that satisfactory for you? And then I'm gonna hold on to that motion, and then I have Councilor Ryan and Dan Burr. Okay,
That's fine. Bring me back to the party.
all right, Councilor Ryan.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I agree totally with Councilor Kritzman. I remember. Well, I'm in my 4th year on the council now, and my inaugural speech on the floor of the council was about the parking minimums, and I want to eliminate them. And I really would like to see if we can work this in now and eliminate the parking minimums for all the restaurants, whether they have outdoor dining or not. And if we do seasonal, I agree with that, but I just want to make sure that the season's long enough, not like our swimming season. Which is not long enough. I'll just throw that in. I really don't want to. I know the city and probably planning and the executive branch want to put prices on these fees on these outdoor dining, but I wouldn't want to. And if we did, I'd only want it to be a token, because restaurants are still struggling. We've lost a lot, and the ones that are there now are still in the process of building up their customer base again. And I know a lot of people that still will not go inside. Even today, they will not go inside. And I don't agree with that, but that's their health they're worried about. So that's all I have to say.
Thank you, Councilor Ryan. Councilor Danberg. Right.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I really agree with everything that's been said. What I want to make sure of is that if we decide that we want to move ahead with doing away with parking minimums for restaurants, with which I agree, I don't want that to hold back what we're trying.
You're
I think
free.
that we could certainly come back to this if if we can do it, no, I'm in favor of that. I would not want this to be made because we.
Okay, Counselor Danberg, we get it, but you are breaking up pretty consistently. We heard your general message, but you're breaking up.
Better drive over here.
Yeah, right. Can you hear us?
No, she's totally frozen.
Oh, she's totally frozen.
Could you read back what she just said? No pressure.
Exactly. As okay, it looks like she lost contact. Oh, sorry about that. So Counselor Wright, you're next.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I believe that we should change our parking minimums for restaurants, but I do not think we should eliminate it completely. Look at the Santander Bank project with the restaurant there and West Newton, which does not have a lot of parking. And if all of a sudden we have a 150, 200 seat restaurant, there's going to be a fight for parking, and other businesses may go out of business because people won't be going to West Newton because of the parking situation. So I think we should change it and possibly eliminate, X number 20 spots or whatever. That's something in discussion. But for the bigger projects, it should still go in for the special permit and for review. And depending on the situation, we may grant it, and that's okay. But I think it should be more on a case-by-case basis and not just a blanket, get rid of it completely. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Counselor Wright. Okay, Counselor Baker.
Well, it will be no surprise to Councilor Kretzmann that he and I might disagree. I know. See, I told you, but never mind. I just think that, this provision has been approved by PS&T, and it's also on a short-term basis. I think you can certainly raise the question generally. I just think this is not the wise forum to try and do that because it might end up delaying the process. Planning director.
I was just going to suggest we vote.
That we vote.
Vote and we can have this discussion at the public hearing.
Yes, we have 7 minutes, 7.5 minutes, but President Albright wanted to speak.
So I think it's a great notion and it's already built into the village center zoning. So we will have this discussion, but the way this discussion was going tonight with some counselors on one side and some counselors on the other is the reason why I don't want to tie it to this outdoor dining thing. I want the outdoor dining to go through. Yeah. And then we can have all the discussion we want. And we will talk about it because it's in the version that we have to look at.
I second that. I'm not on the committee.
And I was just going to recognize you because I saw you
It's okay.
gesticulating. Okay, and Councilor Leary, you're in the same place.
Yes.
Okay. Councilor Kretzmann.
I move to set the public hearing for February 13th.
Thank you. I assumed you had already made that motion, but that's great. So all those in favor of February 13th for the public hearing, please say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed or abstaining? I see none. Thank you very much. We will see you all on the 13th. And we're starting that meeting at 7. Just want to remind everyone, which I will probably also do tonight, that we're going to have a lot of material to cover that night and Wednesday night as well. So we will want to hopefully make this item to cover it as expeditiously as possible. I agree.
Can I ask my process question?
Oh, I wouldn't be a meeting without.
I know that. I just wanted to honor Councilor Larry who
Yes.
said, please make sure you extra. But we have the memo from the department about the compliance with the MBTA Communities Act. Is that going to be set for a specific conversation among the community?
It's relevant to our village center zoning. I don't see why we normally bring up the
I just think
MBTA
you might have a
communities
chance
as
to
it.
talk about some of the ideas in there. There's a 40R reference, for example, which is new to me, but
Can I just chime in quickly? That's just how the state categorized that question. It was 40R or overlay. So since we're proposing an overlay, we had to check the 40R or overlay button. We're not proposing a 40R.
All right, thank you. That's
Are we good then? Okay,
Yeah.
all right, good, because that's not on our agenda for this
No,
evening.
no, I just want to say we could discuss.
Okay,
We can hold this thing.
yes, we do.
And we'll hold.
Motion to hold by Counselor Kurtzman. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed or abstentions? Motion carries. Thank you, everyone. Good night. Good night. See you in favor.